What is up, college football fans? What's up, Clemson Tiger fans? I hope everyone's having a great day. Every day above ground is a great day as far as I'm concerned. And of course, it's always a great day to be a Clemson Tiger. Man, I'm happy to be back doing these State of the Fan addresses that I started doing last year every single Sunday, or depending on when the game's played. Most of the games are played on Saturday. So every single Sunday, I give a State of the Clemson Fan address for the Clemson fans and for all the other people out there who follow me or Clemson football. You don't have to be a Clemson fan necessarily. But I was going to wait to do the first State of the Fan address closer to week one. But honestly, after all of the rubbish and ignorance that I've been hearing coming out of a lot of college football fans' mouth about the expectations for Clemson and their roster, I really just couldn't wait any longer. So I'm out here in 115-degree heat and 100% humidity, fulfilling my obligation to all you fans. I don't even really know where to start, honestly. Let's start with the roster because all I keep hearing from a lot of different people is that Clemson doesn't have offensive weapons. Based on what? What are you basing that on? Last season, we had two of our three best wide receivers were true freshmen, and one of those two was hurt the entire season. All of the offensive production was put on the shoulders of Will Shipley, running back, and Phil Maffa, running back, both returning this year. And the receivers that we did have that were healthy, and the tight end, we'll get to him in a minute, were relying on maybe the worst quarterback that Clemson's had in a decade. That's right, at least a decade. I'm even including Kelly Bryant in there. You can say what you want to about Kelly Bryant, but he was a winner, and he took Clemson to the playoffs. Of course, they lost in the first round to Alabama. But my point is, this is an entire new offense. Look, I heard somebody say yesterday, Clemson's only got two promising receivers, and neither one of those guys are Sammy Watkins or Mike Williams. I'll concede that nobody on this roster is Sammy Watkins or Mike Williams. There's only five receivers in the country that are Sammy Watkins or Mike Williams. So that's just a ridiculous bar to set for the receiver position. Not to mention, we had one of the worst offensive coordinators in the country. Do you know how bad of a coordinator that you have to be fired by Dabo Swinney? You have to be pretty bad. Do you know how bad of a coordinator you have to be to get fired by Dabo Swinney after 1 year? That's how bad he was. Everybody knows Clemson went out and got probably the biggest splash hire that's not a head coach in all of college football last year, going to get Garrett Riley from TCU. I have heard several people now, and this just blows my mind. This just blows my mind. I have heard several people now say that TCU offense last year had more talent on it than Clemson's offense this year. That's insane. TCU's offense is made up of nothing but 3 stars. They might have had 1 or 2 4-stars on there. I don't know. I don't follow recruiting like that, and I certainly don't follow every single team's roster. But I do know if you look at TCU's recruiting rankings average over the past 3 or 4 years, which is the players they're playing with, they might have had a transfer or two, I don't know. It doesn't come anywhere close to the talent on Clemson's offense. Not anywhere close. Now, a lot of this is going to be predicated on how Klubnik plays. We don't know how Klubnik's going to play because he didn't play much last year. They handed the keys to DJ. They stuck with him pretty much the entire offseason. Yeah, they benched him during one game. And then, of course, Klubnik played in the bowl game. But we didn't really get to see what Klubnik is all about at quarterback. Not to mention, this is the first time since Jordan Leggett that Clemson has a real threat at tight end catching the ball. The first time. Now, he played last year, and this is one of the things that really, really got under my skin last year. Coming into the season, what's his face? Streeter. I'm having a brain fart here. Brandon Streeter was saying all of the right things. Brandon Streeter was saying, oh, we're going to get the tight ends more involved. Oh, we're going to spread the ball around. Oh, we're going to stop with all the screen passes and this and that. None of that came true. There wasn't a single difference that I could notice between the Tony Elliott-led offense and the Brandon Streeter-led offense. Not a single difference. The only difference was Brandon Streeter was working with a less competent quarterback, in my opinion. And I know depth has been an issue, especially at the wide receiver position over the past couple of seasons, because you get a couple of your key receivers hurt, and then you're down to, Will Taylor and Spector. But this year we have 3 number 1 receivers. 3. Antonio Williams, like I said, who was a true freshman last year, who really showed a lot of promise and a lot of potential. Bo Collins, I don't know why nobody's talking about Bo Collins. You should be talking about Bo Collins. And, of course, Adam Randall, who was hurt for the majority of the year. If he's able to stay healthy, he might be just as good as the other 2 guys I just mentioned. And, of course, I already mentioned Jake Brenningstool, who is a huge threat that we just haven't had. Of course, Will Shipley and Phil Maffa, 2 huge weapons. Clemson hasn't had a running back duo, that's right, a running back duo this good since Thunder and Lightning. And that's 15 years ago, right? 15, 16 years ago, whatever it was. Not to mention, everyone is focusing on the offense. And I get why they're focusing on the offense, because the offense has been pretty bad outside of a couple of key players. Like, they've been pretty bad last year outside of Will Shipley, Phil Maffa, and Antonio Williams, right? Quarterback play was bad. Receiver play was bad. Offensive line play was average at best. But you can't run a competent offense without those key weapons on the outside. And, of course, the main thing is the guy behind center. So all of those are going to be upgraded this year, all of them. But the thing that really gets me is that why is nobody talking about Clemson's defense? All of the focus seems to be going on the offensive side of the ball, and that's because of all the changes that are happening. That's because of Garrett Riley coming in. So I get why people are focusing on that, but people are totally ignoring year 2 of Wes Goodwin with this defensive roster. This is one of the best defensive rosters in the country and one of the most veteran rosters in the country. The defensive line is going to be absolutely disgusting and filthy. The linebacker core, 2 of the best linebackers in the country, in Trenton Simpson and Barrett Carter. I think that some of the defensive back play, especially with the injuries and the lack of depth at the positions at cornerback and safety over the past couple of seasons, has people kind of like a little on edge about that part of it. But I think this is probably the best defensive back core that we've had probably since 2018. That nasty defense that went 15-0 and of course stomped Alabama 44-16 in the national title game. So I guess my point is, if you look at Clemson's schedule, right, their 3 toughest games, because I know they won't like to say, oh, they don't play nobody. We know that whole deal, right? But then they go out and they go, Clemson don't play nobody, and then they go, but Florida State's going to win the ACC and they might make the playoffs. That's how good Florida State's going to be. Well, that's somebody then. I mean, you're saying it's somebody. I'm not saying it. You're saying it. They played Notre Dame. Does anybody think Notre Dame's going to be a terrible football team? I don't. They're recruiting better the past 2 seasons than they recruited in the past 10. Now, we'll see what happens with their quarterback situation. But that's 2 of their toughest games. And both of those games are in Death Valley. Their third toughest game, South Carolina. Well, Pete, all you do is run around talking about how South Carolina ain't no good. Look, I'm not saying South Carolina's not any good this year. They were one of the hottest teams coming in, not coming in, to end the season last year, right? And Spencer Rattler played awful for the majority of the year, and then he got really, really hot at the end of the year. Of course, Spencer Rattler is coming back for them this year. That game is in Columbia. But it's also at the end of November. So there's a lot of things that can happen, football and otherwise, between now and the end of November to really put a judgment on how good South Carolina is going to be, and I guess how good Clemson's going to be on offense. So there's three viable teams. And I believe that Clemson has a good chance to beat all three of them. Now, whenever I pick preseason predictions for a record for Clemson, anybody who's been following me on YouTube for the past 6 years, 6.5 years now, I have never picked Clemson to go 12-0 in the regular season. And I'm not going to this year. So I do believe that Clemson will drop one of those games, either against Florida State, against Notre Dame, or against South Carolina. I just don't see a way in hell, honestly, that Clemson loses any of those other games. Mainly because of what I just got done saying about the defense. Which one of these offenses on Clemson's schedule, outside of Florida State probably, and maybe South Carolina, and mainly that's because of the skill position players they have on those teams and the quarterback play. That's the main reason. I'm not so sure about Notre Dame's offense right now. But all three of those teams and then the rest of the teams on Clemson's schedule, how many of those teams are going to be able to put up more than 14 to 17 points on Clemson? Not many. Not many, if any, of them will. So Garrett Riley in this offense don't necessarily need to go out there and score 45 and 50 points a game. They just don't need to, not to win these games. And I believe there will be several games where they do score 45 and 50 points. So don't get me wrong. But if you look at the roster as a whole, totality, the coaching staff as a whole, and the schedule as a whole, I don't know how anybody with any sense or football acumen at all could pick Clemson to lose more than one game in the regular season. I just don't. Now, am I saying it's 100% fact, pencil it in, that Clemson's going to win 11 or 12 games in the regular season? Look, this is college football. Anything can happen. I'm not crazy. Yeah, I am a homer, but I'm not crazy, and I'm sure not stupid. The expectation for Clemson, set by our boy Dabo Swinney, is for them to be a playoff team in 2023. They should be. The main hump they have to get through to do that is their only real threat in the ACC, and that's Florida State. Florida State's getting all the hype, which is just fine with your boy. Florida State getting all the love and getting all the hype for winning the ACC is just fine with your boy, because that puts the pressure, the unneeded and unwanted, and really, they shouldn't have that pressure put on them. I think it's unwarranted. But I think it's good. It's good for Clemson, because when's the last time that Florida State had any real pressure on them from the outside? Now, they probably had a lot of pressure from the fan base and down in the state of Florida and specifically in the city of Tallahassee, but really they haven't had any pressure on them over the past several years from the rest of the country and other fan bases. They got it now. So it's one thing to be the underdog constantly and work your way up the ranks. It's a whole nother thing to win consistently whenever you're expected to be the best in your conference. And Clemson has done that more times than they have not. And Dabo Swinney's done that more times than he has not. And Dabo Swinney has proved over and over and over and over again that he is willing to make the hard decisions when it comes to his staff to win. Period. So I guess what you can get out of this is I don't think that Clemson's roster offensively is a problem. I know that their roster defensively isn't a problem. The main thing this is going to come down to, in my opinion, is the health of the receivers throughout the season, which we just don't know. I mean, people get injured, and the quarterback play. Because I have no doubt that Garrett Riley is going to scheme him up, right? If he could do what he did at TCU with a roster full of 3 stars, what can he do at Clemson with a roster full of 4 and 5 stars? That's what's on Clemson's offense, a bunch of 4 and 5 stars. I mean, the main guys. Not that there aren't 3 stars on the offense, there are. But the main weapons. The main weapons. All right, I think I rambled on long enough. Thank you for joining me for the State of the Fan Address preseason edition. Don't worry, I'll be back every single week, the day following the Clemson games, and give you my thoughts. And I know the first time, if Clemson loses the game, that'll be the most viewed State of the Fan Address it was last year. But that's just fine with me. Have a great day.